Right, Mason, this is it. Chill out, be professional, don't gush too much. Oh, screw it. Hello everyone, Mason here. How you doing? Today I'm back with another book review. This time I'm talking about The Switch by Beth O'Leary, which was published on the 18th of August 2020. Before I get into the review, here's a funny story. I read the first line of the description of The Switch, thought it sounded interesting and purchased it, but I mustn't have been paying attention because I totally thought it was going to be a body swap story, and it wasn't. What am I like? So far this year I've read about dystopian empires, magic, alternative universes, cults and serial killers. And then there's The Switch, a character-driven, down-to-earth, relatable family drama, and guys, I loved it. I loved every single second of it. I spent pretty much the entire time with a massive grin on my face. There were so many occasions where I laughed out loud. I fell in love with the characters, and the story had me so drawn in that I finished it in 3 sittings, and I was absolutely gutted when it was finished. For me, reading The Switch was about as comfortable as sitting inside on a bitterly cold, snowy day in an armchair in front of a log-burning fire, wearing the thickest pair of slippers I could find, drinking a steaming mug of hot chocolate. I'm totally serious, guys, this was my favourite reading experience of this year so far. At first, you may think the premise of The Switch is slightly wacky, the sort of thing that only happens to fictional characters, but after reading the whole thing, I have to say that I think that what happens is not just believable, but understandable. Whilst The Switch does take a look at grief, anxiety, and the hole that people leave behind when they're gone, whilst there are sad and bittersweet moments, they're balanced so well with the heartwarming, hopeful, and humorous ones. Lena is a young, intelligent, organised, career-driven woman. So far, she's done quite well for herself. She's a rising star in the company that she works for, and she's been showing a lot of potential for the future. But as the story picks up, she's still reeling from the recent loss of her sister Carla. Lena is stuck. She's struggling with her mental health. Plagued by anxiety and grief, she's been shaken to her core. One day, she suffers a panic attack and completely blows an important business meeting. After that, she's forced to take a 2-month sabbatical to get her head straight. This is devastating for Lena because she's been using her work as an escape, as a distraction, as a way to keep her mind focused, and she's not sure what she's going to do for these 2 months. In an attempt to find some comfort, she takes a long, overdue visit to her grandmother's house. Eileen is Lena's grandmother, but she's going through a rough time as well. Not only did Carla's death cause a rift to form in their family, but Eileen's husband Wade recently left her for another woman, and now at 79, she's alone for the first time in a long time. When Lena arrives in her grandmother's rural hometown of Hamley in the Yorkshire Dales, she finds that Eileen has been writing a list of the eligible men in the village, but the problem is the options are pretty slim. Realising that Eileen is feeling lonely, reflecting on her past and yearning for adventures that she never had, Lena suggests something drastic. The two of them will swap lives for 2 months. Lena will stay in Hamley and look after all of Eileen's responsibilities. Meanwhile, Eileen will take the trip to London that she always wanted and stay in Lena's flat that she shares with 2 of her best friends, Martha and Fitz. What follows is a story of both women going on journeys of self-discovery. Lena needs to find a way to let her sister go, to accept what happened and move on. She needs to find a way to climb out from inside her own head and move past the debilitating anxiety that she's been feeling. She needs to realise that she probably won't ever be the same and find out who she is in this post-Carla world. Meanwhile, Eileen needs to fulfill the dreams that she missed out on. She needs to learn to live for herself and find out who she is now that she's alone. She needs to rediscover her youthful side and even her sexuality. The way that both of these stories unfold and intertwine is so much fun to follow. I quickly grew attached to both of these characters, and I found them equally likeable and relatable in different ways. As you would expect with the contrast between big city living and rural life, both of these settings feel completely different and offer their own unique challenges. In Hamley, Lena has a lot to do and some big shoes to fill. She has to look after Eileen's nearly identical cats and to Deck, and she just cannot tell the difference between them. She also has to put up with Arnold, Eileen's extremely grumpy, nosy neighbour. She's thrown headfirst into dealing with the Neighbourhood Watch, which is really just a club that the elderly residents of Hamley use to swap gossip rather than making any attempt to fight crime. Not that there is any crime, because Hamley is way too quiet for that sort of thing, although one of the residents does have a vendetta against squirrels. Hamley is one of those small towns where everybody knows everyone else and they're all familiar with each other's business. Lena doesn't necessarily get the warmest welcome because Eileen is an active member of the community. Everyone knows who she is, they respect her, and they don't think that Lena is going to be an adequate substitution. One of her main obstacles is Betsy, Eileen's best friend, who does not like Lena. They get off on the wrong foot and Lena has to spend a lot of time working very hard to try and win Betsy round, especially because she has so much influence when it comes to the rest of the members of the Neighbourhood Watch. Eileen is also a member of a planning committee that's arranging the festivities for the May Day Fete, which is a tradition in Hamley. This committee consists of all of the same members as the Neighbourhood Watch. Because Eileen has taken on so many of the planning responsibilities for herself, these now become Lena's responsibilities. Amongst other things, Lena needs to arrange food, transport, and find a sponsor for the event, which is something that Eileen has been struggling with so much that she's pretty much given up. Another one of the biggest hurdles that Lena has to overcome while she's in Hamley is being in the same town as her mother. As I said earlier, Carla's death has caused a rift to form in their family, and in particular, Lena and her mum have not been seeing eye to eye. But what Lena hasn't realised is that her mother has been struggling more than she knows, and so Lena has to confront some home truths and start at least trying to build some bridges. On top of all of that, Lena also has a boyfriend called Ethan, who isn't particularly happy with her decision to just leave her life behind for 2 months. He doesn't get why it's so important, and maintaining this suddenly long distance relationship is difficult. It's safe to say when Lena arrives in Hamley, she's a mess, and she's not particularly well equipped to deal with the responsibilities that she now has. But she knows how important it is to her grandmother, and that makes it important to her. The journey that she goes on is so relatable, so much fun to follow, and it's filled with a mixture of eye-rollingly awkward, heartwarmingly uplifting, deeply sad, and some hilarious moments. Meanwhile, London is a bit of a culture shock for Eileen. It's not the close-knit, community-spirited, beautifully landscaped place that she's used to. Instead, she's confronted with the unfriendly, impersonal hustle and bustle of urban life. She's horrified by the fact that nobody knows each other in Lena's block of flats. They're all isolated from and untrusting of each other. In fact, when she tries to talk to one of Lena's neighbours, they're quite rude to her. She's also saddened by the abandoned, dilapidated communal area, which only consists of 2 mysteriously stained sofas, and nobody wants to spend time in there. She's looking for a new adventure, some excitement, some romance. Helped along by Lena's friends, she begins to navigate the unfamiliar world of internet dating, which is quite sweet, to be honest. I was so amused by some of the exchanges that she has with people online. Eileen is quite similar to Lena. She's very driven, organised, writes a lot of lists, and she's quite goal orientated. Although she starts out her time in London wanting an adventure, somewhere along the line her motivation shifts. When she meets one of Lena's neighbours, she realises that the city must be quite an isolated place for someone her age, and one of the goals that she ends up setting for herself is to bring a sense of community and neighbourly spirit to Shoreditch. I loved Eileen, to be honest. She's so amusing and incredibly likeable. She's the sort of woman that we would all benefit from having as a grandmother. She's caring, open, perceptive, full of words of wisdom, but she's also a little bit cheeky, and she's nosy. She likes to meddle. Once she sets her mind to something, she's gonna get it done by any means necessary. She also has a fondness for murder mysteries, which is something that she has in common with my grandmother, which I think made me like her just that little bit more. One of the things that I liked about Eileen's story is it's something different for me. I wouldn't usually read about a 79-year-old woman whose husband has just left her and now she's going to try internet dating to try and find a new man, but following her as she does just that, whilst at the same time mothering Lena's flatmates, trying to fix their lives and help them with their problems, and also creating a sense of community for Shoreditch, trying to bring some of that small town spirit to the big city, was absolutely fantastic, and I'm so glad that I got a chance to read it. I personally thought that the writing style worked perfectly. The story is told in first person present tense, and so it isn't the sort of story where you're going to get the most flowery, detailed prose, because Lena and Eileen are two normal, everyday women and we see the world through their eyes. However, I do feel that Beth O'Leary does a fantastic job of painting a picture, and I always felt that I had a clear mental image of what people looked like and where the scene was taking place. From Eileen's homely cottage and the rolling hills of the Yorkshire Dales, to the drab urban environments of London with its modern interiors, garishly decorated cafes, and the flat of an elderly woman that Eileen befriends that's decorated with dream catchers and other assorted bric-a-brac. I also felt that O'Leary does an equally good job with internal information. The way that she describes the emotional and physical effects of anxiety felt so real, and it made me relate to Lena even more. I felt a huge sense of empathy for her, and I just wanted her to find a way past it all so she could find inner peace. Then there's the romance. The Switch was actually nominated by Goodreads as one of the best romances of last year, and I can see why. I feel like so far on this channel I've given romance a hard time, and it could easily come across as if I don't like it, but that's not true. The way that Beth O'Leary describes that sensory overload that comes with romantic and sexual attraction, the heightened awareness of someone's touch, the quickening of a pulse, the excitement of those little glances and the tense exchanges worked so perfectly, and I found the romantic moments to be sweet and lovely and heartwarming, and I couldn't get enough of them. They gave me that warm, fuzzy feeling. I also can't speak highly enough of the narration. Daisy Edgar-Jones voices Lena. She brings a sense of vulnerability to the table, but she also communicates the range of emotions that Lena feels throughout the story so well. Alison Steadman voices Eileen, and I don't know if anyone could have done a better job than she did. Even the breaths that she takes adds to Eileen's character. Beth O'Leary writes natural, believable dialogue, and both Jones and Steadman deliver it beautifully. They bring life to those characters, and not just to the protagonists, but to the side characters too. Beth O'Leary touches on some poignant and important messages in The Switch. She explores how destructive bottling up and completely avoiding your emotions can be, how grief can make us act irrationally and place blame where it isn't deserved, on how we need to find a balance between living life for ourselves and making it better for others. She touches on the fact that we shouldn't settle for things out of a sense of responsibility, on how sometimes we need to stop holding ourselves back and throw ourselves into something new in order to find happiness. She touches on the fact that being old doesn't mean that you're nearly dead. You can still go on adventures, fall in love, have a sex life, and live life to the fullest. There are so many things that I took from the Switch. I absolutely loved it. And if it isn't clear by now, I cannot recommend it highly enough. Right, well, I hope you enjoyed today's review, guys. I know I spent the whole time just gushing about how much I loved this book, but if you had a good time, say hi in the comments section and we'll have a chat about it. Then you and the like button should enjoy a steaming mug of hot chocolate together. And if you haven't already, subscribe so that you don't miss any of my future reviews. The link to my Twitter is in the description. As always, thanks so much for spending time with me today, guys. Until next time, take care, I'm off, and you should have a good one.